He says he has a large number of supporters too around the direction on climate. Do you agree with that?
Joel's obviously said a lot of things recently. I am absolutely confident that our party is committed to a positive and strong policy on climate change. Net zero emissions by 2050. You heard Andrew Albanese set out the link between climate change policies and jobs at his budget reply speech, rewiring the electricity grid. We are absolutely focused on the fact that good climate change policies are also good for jobs and good for the economy.
The problem he cites is you keep having these more ambitious policies and they either get scrapped, i.e. the carbon tax, or you lose elections, which the carbon tax was a big part of as well. It hasn't been successful in terms of taking it to elections, has it?
We won an election and would have introduced an emissions reduction scheme had the Greens not blocked it, which they seem to forget very often. And it is... The rest of the world understands. I mean, every state and territory in Australia understands net zero by 2050. The UK understands. Even China understands. BHP, the Business Council, the ACTU, you know, the list goes on and on and on. Everyone understands why this is so important for jobs, for the economy and for the planet. And I represent an outer suburban seat which was held by the Liberals for 23 years, and I ran on a positive agenda to deal with climate change and also to make sure that Australians have jobs in the future, and I won the seat.
So you seem to disagree with Joel Fitzgibbon. Is it frustrating that he's gone so public in this way?
Well, Joel Fitzgibbon's a backbencher. I'm a backbencher. He can do whatever interviews he wants.
Yeah.
And
is it better that he's gone? He was speaking out as a frontbencher as well. Is it better that he's gone to the backbench? Is it more appropriate?
He's made that decision, and you know the decisions about whose shadow ministers are a little bit above my pay grade. I don't think it's bad for this country to have a proper discussion about what reducing emissions and protecting the environment means, and we need to have a proper discussion based on facts.
It's interesting to look at the way the world is going at the moment, not just the election of Joe Biden, but South Korea, Japan, 2050 net zero, even China 2060, I think their target is, which is a while off. It is shifting that way, isn't it?
Well, I think first things first, Tom, the Labor Party's Cold War on climate change has now turned into open conflict. And, you know, Joel Fitzgibbon has come out, he's laid down the gauntlet to Anthony Albanese. What I'm hearing around my electorate and the places that I go to is that workers are feeling absolutely abandoned by the ideological zealotry of the Labor Party. Now, you know, the Labor Party of today is just a shadow of its former self. I don't care about workers anymore. What they are absolutely focused on is one thing and one thing only, and that's climate change ideals. So, I mean...
What do you mean by that? What policy do they have at the moment is ideological zealotry?
Well, that's all they want to talk about.
No. What policy is that?
But that is all... Climate change is all they talk about. They are not supporting their base, and that is looking after their workers. I mean, 30 years ago, they were absolutely focused on looking after the workers, and now we've had to step into that breach. And we are providing legislation that looks after workers. So what I am hearing, and what the Australian workers are telling us at the last election and the election before that, is that the Labor Party has lost faith with the workers.
But how, for example, does cutting penalty rates help workers?
Well, Tom, that's very easy to look at one particular issue, right? One particular
pretty big one if you're out there earning a salary.
Well, we are absolutely focused on ensuring that we have an industrial relations scheme that works for both workers and employers.
Okay, can I just round this off though? So 2050 net zero is the one policy Labor has on climate at the moment. That's not ideological zealotry, is it?
Look, we agreed in the Paris Agreement. Australia is a good international citizen. We agreed. We met our Kyoto targets by 430 million tonnes.
But I just want to go to that policy. Is that ideological zealotry?
We are meeting and we will beat our Paris commitments. And in the Paris Agreement, we agreed, as the rest of the world did, to get our carbon emissions to zero in the second half.
Right, yeah, but by 2050,
Which is what, 2099?
is that
Or 2050?
ideological zealotry to have net zero by
Well,
2050?
it's not just a matter of the policy, it's what you focus
I
on.
understand that, but it's a simple
what
question.
the Labor Party are focused on is climate change and nothing else. And look, hang on, this is not just me saying this,
I'm
Tom.
just asking this question, though.
This is not just me saying this.
Is 2050 net zero ideological zealotry?
It's the way that they concentrate on that and nothing else. It's almost as though it's the only show in town. Right. And that's what we're seeing from what Joel's saying. Joel is trying to introduce a bit of sensibility to Labor Party policy.
Let's talk about relationships between ministers or MPs and staffers as well. One of the things Scott Morrison said yesterday is the Greens and Labor should look at a similar ban. Does that make sense? It's still a boss.
I don't have any issue with that. It's the way the Prime Minister often works is to try to deflect attention by suggesting others should do something. I don't have any problem, and in fact, I am a fierce advocate for proper codes of conduct and proper behaviour where people who are in positions of power do not exploit that to the detriment of others. Because we're not in government, Andrew. You're in government. Just let me finish this, because this is a really important point and it shouldn't be a partisan issue. And that was my point about what Mr Morrison said. I don't have an issue with the idea that everyone should be signing up to behaving properly in the workplace. I have an issue with this being turned into a partisan issue. Watching the Four Corners report on Monday night, as a woman who 20 years ago worked in this parliament, has worked in it again recently and is now elected to this parliament, one of the overwhelming feelings that I had was feeling so sorry for those women who felt that they had to expose themselves in the way they did on Four Corners in order to raise an important issue. And it's a conversation that is difficult, and that means we need to engage in it, and we need to engage in it in a serious way, not political point scoring.
OK, but just that direct question. So you would support that if that were removed? I mean, the Labor Party could introduce it itself?
We can't introduce ministerial standards of conduct.
No, I'm not saying it's not ministerial. They're not.
We've certainly come a long way and have done a lot of work about respectful relationships. And I can tell you, as I said, as someone who was in this building 20 years ago and is in this building now, culture has improved out of sight, as it should have. I am not against anything that we might do for our own party that would set standards of appropriate behaviour, and that's a conversation.
But whether it's a minister or a shadow minister,
or in fact,
should the same rule should apply?
I don't have any problem, as I said, with having a code of conduct internally that makes sure that these things don't happen. No one should feel that they are under pressure.
Why stop at ministers or shadow ministers? You know, it doesn't matter whether you're a minister or a shadow minister. You as a backbencher, even, and myself, I'm talking the collective.
Yes.
We are in a position of great privilege as an employer. There is always that power imbalance between employer and, in what can often be young women, and that power imbalance should not be abused.
So that should apply to the Liberal Party too?
Absolutely.
Well, it doesn't at the moment.
Well, the PM said yesterday that this is something that we should have across the board. He did say that in Parliament.
But it doesn't at the
arguing,
moment.
Though. Andrew and I aren't arguing about this. It's a workplace. Everyone in a workplace has the right to feel safe.
The question is how you enforce it when it's not the executive. I mean, you know, look, what's going to happen if I don't, as a backbencher, or as Peter as a backbencher doesn't abide by that?
Because you don't lose your seat.
You don't lose your seat. Where's the stick? That's the problem as backbenchers. But you know, this is something that we could look at.
And again, I think
so. You'd be comfortable with that, and across the board, if you're an MP, no matter what MP, you have staff.
Same workplace. It's the
workplace. And Tom, the other issue, of course, is continuing to push for this place and politics to be more gender equal, and that also makes a difference when you have young men who are staffers as well as young women, and when you have more women who are parliamentarians as well as men. You know, you have more of a culture where people are regarded as working colleagues, and there's and I think that is very important. And Andrew and I aren't arguing about this. We are
Peter,
agreeing about that culture.
I do want to get this plug in.
Just briefly, because quickly. I'm getting in trouble at the moment.
Peter and I serve on the Social Policy and Legal Affairs Committee, which I'm the chair of that committee. And we're doing an inquiry in relation to domestic violence at the moment. Domestic violence is endemic in our community. And one of the greatest causes of domestic violence is the inequality of the sexes.
Everyone says it.
Now, everyone says that. And where you have that power imbalance between employer and employee, then there needs to be certain controls or restrictions in place for conduct. That's all we're saying, and I don't think you'd take issue with that.
Absolutely, absolutely not.